done, girls. Excellent performance.
What are you talking about? You weren't even watching Clifford.
Yes, I was.
Don't lie, no you weren't.
I sensed the vibes. I have an excellent vibe sensor right here.
Right.
He just doesn't love us anymore.
Oh, yes, I do. I love you like a wildebeest loves 5 lionesses chewing at his legs.
Hello, I'm Pierce Cuthbertson Smythe, and today I'm spending the first of 5 days with the Spice Girls.
Great glasses, Ellen. I like them.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Come on, girls, we've got to go. Sorry, I'll...
Any second now, the Spice Girls will be stampeding down this corridor in a frenzy of chaos and energy, which of course has become their hallmark.
What, chickens? How many?
Why aren't we going round the back?
I thought you said they were coming down this way.
I never said that. You want me to cut?
I think that would be wise.
Okay, don't worry, there won't be any fans out here. They're all around the front. Okay? Sorted.
In a world overflowing with movies, we need a hero. Someone to separate the bad from the good.
Hi everyone, I'm Em and welcome to Verbal Diorama episode 336, Spice World. This is the podcast that's all about the history and legacy of movies you know and movies you don't. But hi see ya, hold tight. This podcast is here to spice up your life. Welcome to Verbal Diorama. Whether you're a brand new listener to this podcast, whether you're a regular returning listener, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this podcast. I am so happy to have you here for the history and legacy of Spice World. And if you are a regular returning listener, thank you so much for continuing to listen to and support this podcast. This podcast has now been running for 7 years and, 336 episodes. So thank you so much for your support. It genuinely means so much. And animation season is over for another year. After animation season finished, I took somewhat of an extended break to basically get some things done around my house, as well as buy some new equipment for the podcast. So I'm actually recording this with a brand new microphone. Huge thanks to the patrons for funding this new equipment. Hopefully the difference is notable. Animation season is always one of the most fun things that I get to do on this podcast. So whether you listen to all, some, or indeed none of it, thank you for coming back to this podcast anyway, as we step away from animation briefly and instead give this podcast a bit of spice.
Let me add a little bit of spice.
Filmed across just 7.5 weeks, at the same time as they wrote and recorded songs for Spice World, their sophomore album. The Spice Girls' meteoric rise to fame and the prophetic nature of this movie should be studied. In fact, it probably already is. Here's the trailer for Spice World.
When the world is in trouble, when our future is in danger, we call upon one man. But when he's busy, he calls 5 girls. Columbia Pictures presents The Spice Girls.
All right, we're coming.
In their film debut, Victoria, Emma, Mel B, Jerry, and Mel C. They're ready for action. Girl power. They're dressed to kill.
Do you want that shaken or stirred?
And thoroughly prepared for any encounter. It's a story of love.
I think with boys, you should be able to just wheel them in.
Yeah, and order them like a pizza.
Yeah, no cheese.
Compassion.
It's really too hot in here.
I need a fan.
and misunderstanding.
When the speeding melon hits the wall,
There's Christmas for the crows.
What did he say?
I haven't a clue.
That's more like it. This January,
Would you like an hors d'oeuvre?
No. But I'll have one of these pie things.
make your choice.
I like the blonde one. No. Sporty.
Rock your world. And spice up your life with the Spice Girls. Spice World.
Yeah, but can they act?
Blah, 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 girl power, feminism, do you know what I mean?
The Spice Girls have become superstars and a global phenomenon. As they prepare for what may be their most prestigious concert to date at London's Royal Albert Hall, everyone in the world wants their £2 of flesh from the girls at their expense. Their manager Clifford and his behind-the-scenes boss, the Chief, want to control all aspects of the girls' lives with the sole goal of getting them to the concert in the best shape possible. A documentary film crew wants 24/7 access amid the girls' busy schedule. A Hollywood creative team wants them to star in a movie and pitches one outlandish idea after another. The London tabloids want to print whatever salacious story they can get their hands on, even if it ruins the girls' careers. Their best friend Nicola is 9 months pregnant and wants them to be her baby's godmothers. And even some out-of-this-world visitors want what all their adoring fans want. Through it all, the Spice Girls just want to embody girl power and show that friendship never ends, not even with a bomb on a bus. Let's run through the cast. We have Victoria Adams as Posh, Melanie Brown as Scary, Emma Bunton as Baby, Melanie Chisholm as Sporty, Jerry Halliwell as Ginger, Richard E. Grant as Clifford, Claire Rushbrook as Deborah, Roger Moore as the Chief, Naoko Mori as Nicola, Meatloaf as Dennis, Barry Humphries as Kevin McMaxford, Jason Fleming as Brad, Richard O'Brien as Damien, Alan Cumming as Piers Cuthbertson Smythe, George Wendt as Martin Barnfield, and Mark McKinney as Graydon. This movie also features so many cameos, mostly by Jules Holland, Jonathan Ross, Elvis Costello, Elton John, Bob Geldof, Bob Hoskins, Jennifer Saunders, Hugh Laurie and Stephen Fry, among many others. Spice World was written by Kim Fuller, was directed by Bob Spears, and based on an idea by the Spice Girls and Kim Fuller. The rise and fall of the Spice Girls is unlike anything we've ever seen in music history. Their flame burned hot and bright, but not for as long as you might remember, because they became so huge so quickly, and even when they did eventually go on hiatus, they were such a cultural touchstone that they barely left our media nor our collective memories. Their creation is down in part to New Kids on the Block. New Kids on the Block's success led to British boy bands in the early 90s, like Take That and East 17, and Irish ones like Boyzone. Boy bands flooded the pop market, and over in the British R&B market, we had girl group Eternal, one of the most underrated British girl groups of all time, I have to say. Coincidentally, the first auditions for what would become the Spice Girls were to Stay by Eternal. But in the 90s, British girl bands doing pop music wasn't seen as marketable or a money-making venture in the music industry. That was until father and son team Bob and Chris Herbert of Heart Management decided to create a pop girl group to compete with British pop boy bands and take on their dominance of the charts. In February 1994, Heart Management placed an ad in London trade paper The Stage, seeking girls to audition for an all-new, all-girl pop group. The ad said, "Wanted, are you 18 to 23 with the ability to sing/dance? Are you streetwise, outgoing, ambitious and dedicated?" Heart Management Limited are a widely successful music industry management consortium currently forming a choreographed, singing/dancing, all-female pop act for a recording deal. Open audition, Dance Works, 16 Balderton Street, Friday the 4th of March, 11 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Please bring sheet music or backing cassette. Around 400 young women attended the auditions. Jerry Halliwell showed up to the auditions for the band after the first round had already been screened and decisions were being made. She wasn't prepared and had very little idea what she was even auditioning for, yet she managed to get a spot on the strength of her personality and determination, and 5 girls were selected after several weeks of deliberation. Victoria Adams, Melanie Brown, Melanie Chisholm, Jerry Halliwell and Michelle Stevenson, not Emma Bunton. These 5 girls were chosen to become a girl band called Touch. The 5 girls moved into a house in Maidenhead to rehearse and bond as a group. They started choreographing their own dance routines and worked on writing their own songs. A few months into the training, Michelle Stevenson was let go from the group, either for lack of commitment or close family illness. Both are used interchangeably to explain her departure. And the group's vocal coach suggested a former pupil of hers, Emma Bunton, as a replacement. By late 1994, Emma Bunton was now fully integrated into Touch, who were bonded and fully supportive of each other. They were already a force to be reckoned with, loud, vivacious, intimidating, energetic and determined. They already had girl power. They were 5 girls, each from ordinary working class backgrounds, wanting to make songs that defined their generation and defined girlhood. Heart Management, though, still hadn't offered them a permanent official contract, wanting to keep them on their toes and hungry for success. After Heart set up a showcase performance in front of industry writers, producers and executives, the reaction was positive enough to persuade Bob and Chris Herbert to offer the girls a contract, but the girls refused to sign. In January, the group began songwriting sessions with Richard Stannard, whom they'd impressed at the showcase, and his partner Matt Rowe. During these sessions, the songs Wannabe and To Become One were written. The Spice Girls wrote or co-wrote all of their music, and the reason Victoria doesn't have a solo in Wannabe is purely because she wasn't there for the writing session and contributed her thoughts over the phone. Wannabe was recorded in under an hour. And not only did they also co-write all of their music, they had a clause in their contract stipulating that they each receive an equal share of the songwriting credit, along with their regular writing and producing team Absolute. By March 1995, the group left Heart Management in the middle of the night and stole their master recordings back, a story that could probably be a movie in its own right. They then contacted songwriter Elliot Kennedy and the Absolute production team to write and record demos of Say You'll Be There and Who Do You Think You Are? A track called Sugar and Spice led to them renaming themselves Spice. However, that name was already taken, so they became the Spice Girls. After a few weeks of using Jerry Halliwell's Fiat Uno as a makeshift office, they managed to get some demos together. It was these demos that caught the attention of Simon Fuller, who signed them to his management company in May 1995. The characters of Sporty, Baby, Ginger, Scary and Posh, and the individual styles of each girl were a major part of the group's success. They weren't manufactured personas assigned to them by the record company. They were actually coined by a journalist. But once the marketing potential in their own characters became clear, they played it up for all it was worth. Simon Fuller orchestrated a bidding war between major record labels for their debut album, with the girls wanting to retain complete creative control over their personalities, looks and brand. Virgin Records' offer gave them the control they wanted, and they signed a 5-album deal in July 1995 with a £1 million advance and a lavish party in their honour. And in the tradition of the girls not bowing down to their new corporate overlords, they put themed Spice Girls sex dolls in the limo the label sent to pick them up. But despite this shiny new record deal and this shiny new contract with Simon Fuller, there was an immediate issue, because the Spice Girls wanted Wannabe to be their first single. But the label did not. The label preferred Love Thing, a softer R&B song, or Say You'll Be There. Their reasoning was first songs don't often hit. It's usually second singles that make an impact. But the girls stood firm. Wannabe was their introduction. It mentioned each member by name, it was punk-influenced and anarchic and intimidating on purpose. It wasn't a traditional pop song. It had a rap verse, it had Zigga Ziggar, and still no one truly knows what that even is. It wasn't an overly stylised or managed debut. It was raw and honest, like the Spice Girls were. Like they always did in their career, the girls banded together and said it was wannabe or nothing. The label relented. Girl power won again, and for each of their decisions they were steadfast and had a clear and concise idea of what they wanted and who they were, and even for the wannabe video, which was chaotic, supposed to be filmed in Barcelona but ended up at the former Midland Grand, which is now the St Pancras Hotel, in high street clothing, shot through the night in April 1996. The label also didn't like the wannabe music video. It wasn't the glossy glam pop videos of other all-female groups. The video was even banned in some Asian countries because the cold made Melanie B's nipples too visible. The label wanted to reshoot the video for the American market. The Spice Girls didn't, so they didn't. And Wannabe was released on the music video channel The Box and was voted #1 within 2 hours and stayed #1 for 3 months, only to be replaced by the Spice Girls again with Say You'll Be There. Wannabe debuted at #3 in the UK charts in June 1996. A week later, it hit #1, and then the carnage began. The schedule was brutal. Constant TV appearances, radio appearances, public appearances, a never-ending display of girl power. Wannabe reached #1 in 37 countries, becoming one of the best-selling singles of all time as of 2010 by selling over 6 million copies worldwide. The next 2 singles, Say You'll Be There and To Become One, reached #1 in 53 countries. Their debut album Spice would be released in September 1996 and go on to become the best-selling album by a girl group in history, selling 23 million copies worldwide. It didn't mean criticism wasn't there. Mel B, as the only Spice Girl of colour, was told she would have to straighten her hair, but in traditional Spice Girl style, she refused and she let her natural hair flow freely. And just to fully understand the timelines here, by the time their debut album was 15 months old, they had a movie out in British cinemas. That's how quickly all of this happened. And it wasn't just the UK. The Spice Girls were a worldwide phenomenon of the likes we've not seen since. Sure, One Direction were big, but they weren't Spice Girls big. And success here didn't always mean success in markets like the US. Oasis were one of the pioneering bands of Britpop, along with Blur, but both acts saw limited success in the US. Oasis never had a #1 album in the US. They had to make do with top 5, and Wonderwall going to #8. Take that with a pioneering UK 90s boy band, but a relative unknowns in the US, just like Robbie Williams. Even Girls Aloud, one of the most successful British girl groups post the Spice Girls, sold millions of records in the UK, but not in the US. The Spice Girls broke the US easily, unlike any other band had done, except maybe for the Beatles. 5 young women in a band together, sharing songwriting credit and vocal duties equally, was a new concept in British pop in 1996, and it translated. Their target market was a young female fan base, but being attractive young women, they also attracted young men too. In their initial meetings with Simon Fuller, the girls spoke about plans for international pop dominance, and a movie was briefly mentioned, but it was a bit of a pipe dream at the time. But in late 1996, the group's stratospheric rise and the vast marketing machine around them meant that Simon Fuller was already trying to whip up interest in Los Angeles. An initial idea from Disney, with a fictionalised version of the Spice Girls, one of them being a single mother and another supporting an ill relative, before they end up becoming globally famous, was declined by the girls. Screenwriter Kim Fuller, the brother of their manager Simon Fuller, offered instead to write something on spec. On the 1st of November 1996, Simon Fuller would have lunch with Barnaby Thompson and Yuri Fruchtman, who'd started a company called Fragile Films. At the time, Fruchtman was married to Annie Lennox, who was managed by Simon Fuller. Also joining that lunch was Simon Fuller's brother Kim Fuller, who would end up writing the script. Simon Fuller would rather prophetically lay out the arc of the girls' future career, including their future success in the US, and had a very specific idea of what the film should be, noting that the girls weren't actors, they were the Spice Girls, so of course they had to star as themselves in the movie. Kim Fuller wrote a script initially called 5, which was 3 days in the life of the Spice Girls, in the vein of the Beatles' A Hard Day's Night. It would be bright, it would be fun, and it would be bold. Over the next 6 months, as their fame and success grew in the US, where most of the investment would come from, Simon Fuller's predictions were coming true, and day after day, the Spice Girls were becoming a more viable movie investment. They'd released 4 number-1 singles. They were being talked about positively in the press almost daily. Young fans were obsessed with them. And in April 1997, the European deal was done. And in May, the Spice Girls went to the Cannes Film Festival, where they arrived by boat, in a big burst of colour, wearing headscarves in honour of Grace Kelly. The whole French town went crazy. Traffic stood to a standstill, and crowds of 5,000 to 10,000 people formed to catch a glimpse of sporty, baby, ginger, scary or posh. Now, Simon Fuller was all too aware of the wave the group were cresting on, and just like the movie itself mentions, the inevitable backlash. If a movie was going to be made, it needed to be made sooner rather than later. But he also wanted something that would stand the test of time, and something that would sate the lust of Spice Girls fans across the world. Because Spice Girls fandom was unlike anything you see today. If you think that Taylor Swift's fans or Beyoncé's or Rihanna's fans are voracious and passionate, they were nothing compared to the Spice Girls fans. Back then, without the internet's vast reach, the fans of the Spice Girls were desperate for anything to do with or about their favourite band. Kim Fuller wrote the script based on the girls' own lives and experiences. They got together in a hotel in London to read it, and Jerry was particularly involved and worked closely with additional writer Jamie Curtis. Once the script was agreed by everyone, what started as a bit of a silly spoofy movie for the fans quickly turned into a probable blockbuster. And anyone who was anyone in British music or TV who wanted to be down with the kids or on speaking terms with their own kids wanted a part in this movie. The Spice Girls themselves weren't actors, but Emma had been to the Sylvia Young Theatre School, so knew how to hit a mark. Mel C had done amateur productions at Performing Arts College. As for a director, Bob Spears had worked on Absolutely Fabulous and Fawlty Towers. While a few young new filmmakers were touted, Simon Fuller wanted someone he trusted. Spears had been working in America on the Disney movie That Darn Cat at the peak of the Spice Girls' popularity. He was unaware of the group when first offered the job, until his friend and Ab Fab star Jennifer Saunders advised him to take it. He arrived at a meeting with them in a New York City hotel, not knowing what the Spice Girls even looked like. And this was a movie that was constantly evolving as well, because agents would call up the producers suggesting their clients for cameos and roles in the movie. Every new cameo meant updating the script. Script supervisor Sarah Garner nearly quit due to the endless rewrites. The Spice Girls themselves also suggested actors they liked, like Alan Cumming, whom Jerry had seen in Hamlet. This would be just after his role in Goldeneye and Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion, both previous episodes of this podcast, but before Josie and the Pussycats, which is very similar to this movie in so many ways. That's also a previous episode of this podcast. People like Richard E. Grant had a daughter who was a fan, and he gave the project credibility as the star of Withnail and I. Bob Hoskins did it for his children. Gary Oldman was asked to be in it by Jerry, but unfortunately couldn't make it work. He was also going to do it for his children. Richard O'Brien, who is of course a queer icon for creating and starring in the Rocky Horror Picture Show and for UK kids in The Crystal Maze, was also asked to be in the movie, as well as an actual James Bond, Sir Roger Moore, who did all of his scenes in one day. With all of these people, it quickly became the celebrity cameo movie of the 90s. When Kim Fuller cut Moore's ridiculously philosophical lines from the script, Moore had actually memorised them all perfectly and wanted them put back in. Cue Sarah Garner raging from an office at Moore's script changes. Moore just played up the role perfectly, despite the little piglet weeing down his jacket. Meatloaf wasn't the original choice for Dennis the bus driver. Boxer Frank Bruno was originally cast, but quit the movie after his young son allegedly wasn't allowed to come on set for an autograph. This is a movie that was filmed on set and also on location in London, and filming was fraught with challenges from hundreds of screaming fans, and media interest in the production was through the roof. Newspapers were constantly reporting on the filming over the 7.5-week shoot, including calling Naoko Mori, who plays the girl's pregnant best friend Nicola, Rice Spice, which Mori found, quote, mildly racist, but also pretty hilarious, unquote. With press and photographers nipping at the heels of the production, leaks were almost impossible to prevent. The press's antics bordered on the ludicrous. Long lenses were spotted everywhere. People hung out of windows, dressed as builders, followed members of the crew and hid in bushes and trees. Two even dressed as a pantomime cow and hid in a field of real cows, trying to sneak photos from a telephoto lens sticking out of the cow's rear end. I guess you really could call it camouflage. That's enough of that. There were even talks of moles on the set. The movie was filmed in and around iconic locations, including outside BBC Television Centre in London, Parliament Square, the Royal Albert Hall, outside St Paul's Cathedral, Westminster Cathedral, Broadgate Circle, Millwall Inner Dock, not on the River Thames, Battersea Park, Piccadilly Circus, Trafalgar Square, the Mall, Buckingham Palace, Tower Bridge, and most of these scenes are driving the bus. The movie also takes place in the Royal Albert Hall, as well as Loseley Park in Surrey. The interior sets were filmed at Twickenham Studios. Despite the gruelling schedule, the 14-hour days, the rapid pace of each shot and the crack of dawn calls, many of the cast and crew remarked that it was an unusually enjoyable shoot and that the Spice Girls themselves had no airs or graces, and they were just down-to-earth, hard-working and professional as you could be as a Spice Girl. But there were obvious issues. The timescale was incredibly tight. The budget was also incredibly tight. Sequences were removed due to cost, and others had their budget slashed. They were never going to be able to afford to jump a real London bus over Tower Bridge. But the toy version is actually superbly kitsch and silly and really works for the movie. On-screen production values did suffer, even if the production design and costuming really squeezed every penny they could to look great and also age fairly well. Kate Carrin was the costume designer, and this was the first time the Spice Girls had custom-made costumes. And despite on-screen Victoria choosing between the little Gucci dress, the little Gucci dress and the little Gucci dress, there were no Gucci dresses in the movie. All her dresses were custom made for her based on the little Gucci dress template. Although there were plenty of custom pieces, Emma wore Topshop and designers like Blue Marine, while sports brands like Adidas were shipping boxes of clothes and shoes for Mel C to wear. Jerry's outfits were mixed with vintage pieces. Shoe brand Shelley's London made custom footwear for the girls from Carrin's designs, including a pair of black and white polka dot knee-length boots for Mel B. They also had a deal with Marks & Spencer's in Marble Arch, where they could literally go in and fill their trolleys. Clifford's suits were inspired by 60s movies and comic book villains in monochromatic suits in purples and greens, and the arseless chaps on the Dream Boys were Karen's idea as a joke. Production designer Grenville Horner came up with the iconic Union Jack bus after seeing Jerry Halliwell's iconic Union Jack dress at the 1997 Brit Awards, which itself was a literal little Gucci dress that Jerry Halliwell's sister sewed a Union Jack tea towel on the front. The interior of the bus was described in the script as having no seats, luxuriously carpeted, and sectioned off into 5 individual areas, with 5 of everything. 5 towels, 5 bathrobes, 5 toothbrushes, 5 clothes racks. Emma had a fluffy chair, pink wall, lots of teddies and My Little Ponies. Mel B's area was mystical, gothic, with leopard skin throws and oriental wall hangings. Jerry's was 60s pastiche, posters of Charlie's Angels. Mel C's had an exercise bike and posters of Liverpool Football Club, with Victoria's being voguish, sleek, with a rail of expensive clothes. And the bus had a kitchen area with drinks and food vending machines. Horner collaborated with a variety of craftspeople, quilters, drape makers, metal workers and set decorators to perfect the tiniest details of the bus before production began on the Twickenham soundstage. For inspiration, he looked to the work of architects Norman Foster and Richard Rogers, both known for high-tech expressionism. It was supposed to be a modern dollhouse. The vaginal carpet design was apparently accidental, though. Horner also owns the miniature bus, which was hand-painted by himself. The actual proper bus was renovated in 2019 by Suzanne Godley. And if you go to thespicebus.co.uk, you can book a stay on the bus or host a private party or event in it, which is now located at the Island Harbour Marina on the Isle of Wight. It features a cosy living area with Union Jack cinema-style chairs, a TV and CD player with 90s music, all Spice Girls one hopes, a dressing area, 1 bedroom with a double bed and a single bed, and vibrant 90s themed decor. According to Clive Tickner, Spice World's director of photography, although director Bob Spears had impeccable TV credentials, including, as I mentioned, Fawlty Towers and Absolutely Fabulous, he struggled with Spice World. Tickner alleges that Spears was often inebriated on set, and his problems with alcohol affected his decision-making and his attitude. Tickner alleges that he lost 6 camera operators during the course of the shoot because they couldn't work with Spears. Not everyone on the production agreed with Tickner's assessment of Spears, who passed away in 2008, but producer Peter McAleese would suggest Spears' inexperience in feature films worked against him on the movie. This was a movie written, produced and out within a year. The lunch planning it was on the 1st of November 1996, and the movie was delivered exactly 1 year later on the 1st of November 1997. At the same time, the Spice Girls were writing and recording the album Spice World and were working from a mobile studio on site, as well as going back and forth to Abbey Road in full costume and makeup from filming. They wrote Spice Up Your Life 24 hours before shooting that particular scene for the movie at the Albert Hall. Sony executives sent pages of notes. This was a fairly inexperienced production after all, with an inexperienced writer, director and main stars. The notes suggested changes, as well as subtitling Mel C's Scouse accent. But then previews in Los Angeles went down well without the changes, and so they were scrapped. And with that, they had a movie. And now a word from our sponsors, which is you, if you'd like to be. Thank you for listening to this podcast. It's completely independent, made by me, and relies on listener support. If you're enjoying this episode and the work that I do, and you want to support an indie podcaster, if you have some spare change, you can financially contribute to the upkeep of this podcast. You're under no obligation. This podcast is free and always will be, but there are a couple of ways you can help if you wish to and if you have the means to. You can make a one-off donation at verbaldiorama.com/tips, or you can subscribe to the Patreon to support the show monthly at verbaldiorama.com/Patreon. All money made goes back into this podcast by paying for software subscriptions, website hosting, and new equipment. Huge thank you for your continued support. Now, let's learn some more about this movie and how Keanu Reeves is somehow connected to it. But now is the perfect time to segue into the obligatory Keanu reference of this episode. And if you don't know what that is, it's where I try and link every movie that I feature with Keanu Reeves for no reason other than he is the best of men. And this is a really obvious one, actually, because this movie has a bomb on a bus. And what other movie has a bomb on a bus? Well, of course, it's Speed, starring Keanu Reeves. And that is the easiest way to link Spice World to Keanu Reeves. So as I mentioned, during the filming of this movie, the Spice Girls were also recording their second album. An official motion picture soundtrack for this movie was never released because their second album, also called Spice World, served as the soundtrack to this movie. The movie features songs from that album, as well as their first album, Spice. Too Much was released in part to promote the film and debuted at number 1 on the UK singles chart, becoming the Spice Girls' second consecutive Christmas number 1 single, very important in the UK, the Christmas number 1. It made the group the first act to reach number 1 with their first 6 singles and the first to debut at number 1 in the charts 5 times in a row. The premiere for Spice World was held at the Empire Cinema in Leicester Square on the 15th of December 1997 and was a who's who of celebrity guests, including the then Prince Charles and the young princes William and Harry, who, let's remember, had lost their mother just a few months prior. The movie had referenced Diana, Princess of Wales originally, but the reference was removed before release, as well as a reference to designer Gianni Versace, both of whom passed away in summer 1997. Also removed from the movie prior to release was a scene involving Gary Glitter, who was arrested just before release and faced trial for child abuse and child pornography charges. His song, I'm the Leader of the Gang I Am, sung by the Spice Girls, remains in the movie. Spice World was released in the UK on the 26th of December 1997 and was a box office success, hitting number 1 at the UK box office and grossing £2.3 million during its opening weekend. It also set a record opening week gross for a British film in the UK with £4.8 million. It was released on the 23rd of January 1998 in the US and reached number 2 in the box office after Titanic, which had been out for 6 weeks. It had the highest ever weekend debut for Super Bowl weekend, with box office sales of $10.5 million that first weekend. On its $25 million budget, Spice World grossed $56 million worldwide, and when it was released on VHS in May 1998, it was number 1 in the UK video charts for 6 consecutive weeks, certified 11 times platinum, and was the 9th best-selling VHS of 1998 in the UK. In the US, the VHS was number 1 on the video charts for 5 consecutive weeks and was the 5th best-selling video of 1998. Spice World was released on DVD for the 10th anniversary in November 2007 and again for the 20th anniversary in 2018 and was re-released in cinemas in the UK, Ireland and Australia in 2017 for the 20th anniversary. Despite all this, the movie is remarkably difficult to get hold of, with second-hand DVD copies selling for over £20 and no availability on any streaming or rental service here in the UK, likely due to the rights associated with the music contained within the movie, or perhaps because the 30th anniversary is looming and maybe they want to re-release it for that. Spice World in 4K, anyone? I'm not suggesting it's going to happen, but it probably will happen for the 30th anniversary. Unsurprisingly, critics did not warm to this movie. It currently holds a 35% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, with a consensus of Spice World's lack of cohesive plot will likely lose most viewers, but for fans of the titular girl group, there's more than enough fun to be had in their wacky, albeit superficial whirlwind of an adventure. Roger Ebert hated the movie, gave it 1/2 star, saying, "The Spice Girls are easier to tell apart than the Mutant Ninja Turtles, but that is small consolation. What can you say about 5 women whose principal distinguishing characteristic is that they have different names? They occupy Spice World as if they were watching it. They're so detached they can't even successfully lip sync their own songs." That's pretty harsh, Rog. When he reviewed the film on his and Gene Siskel's film programme Siskel and Ebert, only 3 weeks into 1998, he declared that he'd already seen the worst film of that year and called it an entertainment-free dead zone. He included the film on his Worst of 1998 special, but he instead chose Armageddon as the worst film of 1998. But this movie has had somewhat of a retrospective critical reassessment over the years, with people calling it self-aware and smarter than it was originally given credit for, something I agree with wholeheartedly. The Spice Girls were milking the very male-dominated, occasionally sexist and misogynistic music industry. They made music on their terms and they weren't going to follow the rules. And they didn't with this movie either. It was nominated for 7 Golden Raspberry Awards, including Worst Actress for all of the Spice Girls, Worst New Star for all of the Spice Girls, Worst Original Song for Too Much, Worst Picture, Worst Screenplay, Worst Supporting Actor for Roger Moore, and Worst Screen Couple for any combination of 2 people, body parts or fashion accessories. The Spice Girls won Worst Actress over Yasmine Bleeth, Anne Heche, Jessica Lange and Uma Thurman. The movie was also honoured, I guess that's a loose term, in the Golden Raspberry Awards in 2004 in the category of Worst Musical of Our First 25 Years, nominated against Can't Stop the Music, Glitter, Rhinestone and Xanadu, along with the eventual winner from Justin to Kelly, another movie written by Kim Fuller, starring American Idol winner Kelly Clarkson. Needing 5 for the power of Spice turned out to be remarkably prophetic. Within 6 months of Spice World's release in May 1998, Ginger Spice Jerry Halliwell left the Spice Girls, citing exhaustion and creative differences. Rumours of a power struggle with Mel B surfaced, and young fans were left reeling at the news. The remaining members assured everyone they would carry on as a foursome. They continued with their planned North American leg of the Spice World Tour and released Viva Forever, with the stop-motion animated video still including Ginger Spice. 1998 also led to pregnancy announcements, with both Mel B and Victoria expecting. Both gave birth in early 1998 to Phoenix and Brooklyn, respectively, and Victoria would, shortly after, marry footballer David Beckham in a lavish ceremony. By 1999, Mel B, Mel C and Emma had all released solo music, and in 2000 the Spice Girls released their final album, Forever. They ceased promotional activities in December 2000 as they began an indefinite hiatus to concentrate on their solo careers, insisting that the group was not splitting up. All 5 members would return for a worldwide concert tour in 2007, the return of the Spice Girls. Tickets would sell out for the first London date in 38 seconds. In 2010, they collaborated with Judy Kramer and Jennifer Saunders for Viva Forever, a staged jukebox musical. Viva Forever premiered at the West End's Piccadilly Theatre in December 2012, with all 5 Spice Girls in attendance, but it was panned by critics and closed after 7 months, with a loss of at least £5 million. In August 2012, all 5 Spice Girls performed at the 2012 Summer Olympics closing ceremony in London. But despite the relative up and downs post-Spice World, it didn't mean a sequel wasn't talked about. As recently as for the 25th anniversary in 2021, there was a rumour they were looking for writers for a potential animated sequel. But it's unlikely Posh, aka Victoria Adams, then Victoria Beckham, now Victoria Lady Beckham, would be involved, because she's Lady Beckham, and also arguably has had the most success post-Spice Girls in her career as a high-end fashion designer. But Spice World is a movie that wouldn't be made today. It is a time capsule of 90s film and music, meshed together in a movie that's more a sequence of vignettes than an actual story. As a movie, a piece of narrative, it's not really The Godfather, let's be honest, but as a piece of history, a look into the complexities of 90s nostalgia, feminism, pop music, Cool Britannia, and women in male-dominated industries, it's a really fascinating and important piece of pop culture. For one, it aces the Bechdel test, the test created by Alison Bechdel about female presence on screen and whether they only talk about men. The Spice Girls reference men and speak to men on occasion, but it's mostly all about female-centric conversation. There are no love interests. The love on screen is between the Spice Girls themselves. The male characters are mostly just cliched. The highly strung manager, the spitting evil newspaper boss, the man of few words pulling all the strings and speaking in metaphors. Now, the Spice Girls themselves were a manufactured band. Unlike how the movie itself frames their history as being lifelong friends who met in a coffee shop to sing their songs, they were created by men to sell records. They would ultimately become bigger than either Bob and Chris Herbert or even Simon Fuller could control. Indeed, they sacked Fuller just before the movie came out. They were an uncontrollable force of nature. That's why young girls specifically were drawn to them. They were rebellious, anarchic, and completely unique. Every young girl could relate to one member. Every friend group had that sporty friend or that slightly posh friend who had Sky TV at home. That was probably me. The fact they weren't polished, that they were fairly ordinary, made it easy to see ourselves in them. And while it's easy to criticise the movie as them not being able to act, listen, Victoria's one-liners may not be intentional, but she is the silent assassin of comedy in this movie. None of the Spice Girls had the talents of Adele or Ariana Grande in the singing departments, except maybe Mel C, whose debut solo album Northern Star is in my CD collection, and it is genuinely good. But what they lacked in talent, they made up for in genuine, heartfelt self-belief and the confidence to just do it anyway, which is something many young women lack, myself included, so maybe we should all be a bit more Spice Girls. Whether girl power was a manufactured phrase simply to sell records and merch, or third-wave feminism being made palatable for young girls in the 90s, it's hard to deny the cultural shift the Spice Girls had. They were unlike any other group, regardless of music genre. They talked about bodily autonomy, femininity, identity, and opposed rigid gender narratives in a consumer-friendly and accessible way. You were never just one Spice Girl throughout your life. You could start as Baby and become Ginger. They talked about sexuality and sex positivity through their music, but they were never overtly sexual. The long-standing rumour that Mel B and Jerry were in a relationship during the heyday of the Spice Girls was all but confirmed by Mel B in an interview. Mel B herself has been instrumental to the visibility of natural black hairstyles in representation in media. She challenged the 90s beauty standards by having her hair natural, by literally being proud of her roots and defying suggestions to straighten her hair. The fact she was nicknamed Scary Spice feels icky looking back, but Mel B had a voice. All the Spice Girls had a voice, but she used it louder than most and wasn't afraid to clap back, and good for her. I'm glad we live in a world where little black girls can see her in all her natural beauty, being 1/5 of the biggest girl group of all time. And this movie is not only the culmination of their incredible rise, it's also the start of the inevitable backlash and the Spice Girls descending from the throne of pop. But hey, what a journey it was. And girl power still means something. If anything, despite their issues with Jerry leaving the band, that they have reunited several times. And if social media is anything to go by, the five remain friends. So maybe, despite their manufactured origins, friendship really does never end. Thank you for listening, and as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Spice World, and thank you for your continued support of this podcast. If you like this episode on Spice World, I mentioned a couple of other episodes at the beginning of this one, and I'm going to recommend them to you now. Episode 87, Josie and the Pussycats, because it is a fantastic and a wholly underrated movie. that also has Alan Cumming in it, and episode 124, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion, which is another kind of underappreciated comedy that has Alan Cumming in it. So there's definitely an Alan Cumming based theme. As always, give me feedback. Let me know what you think of my recommendations. Thank you for listening to Verbal Diorama, a totally free and independent podcast that relies on listener support. If you want to show your support in multiple different ways, you could leave a rating or review wherever you found this podcast. You could tell your friends and family about this podcast, or you could find me and follow me on social media and you can share the podcast that way. I am at Verbal Diorama across social media, where you can share posts, like posts, comment on posts. It all helps really to get the word out there, to hopefully get other people to know this podcast and know the recent episodes that I've put out. I genuinely love doing this podcast, and anything you could do to help would be so appreciated. A huge thank you to the incredibly generous patrons of this podcast. I could not do what I do without their support. To Simon, Laurel, Derek, Kat, Andy, Mike, Luke, Michael, Scott, Brendan, Ian, Lisa, Sam, Jack, Dave, Stuart, Nicholas, Zoe, Kev, Danny, Stu, Brett, Zenos, Sean, Rhino, Philip, Adam, Elaine, Aaron and Steve. Please consider joining them and supporting this podcast on Patreon if you have the means to. If you want to get in touch, you can email verbaldiorama@gmail.com. You can also go to verbaldiorama.com and you can fill out the contact form. You could say hello, you can give feedback, or you can give suggestions as well. I would genuinely love to hear from you. You can also DM me on social media as well, if that's an option available to you. I love to hear from people and I always try to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks again for listening and thanks for supporting independent podcasting. It means more to us than you know. And finally,
I wonder if we've changed a lot since we've been famous.
I don't think I have.
Nor have I. I just think we worry about different things. I mean, in the old days, it was where's our next meal coming from? And now it's where's our next single going to?
And like, is it all going to be over soon?
Melvin B. Emma, Melvin C., Victoria, Gary. You have been found guilty of releasing a single that is by no means as kicking as your previous records. Nor does it have such a wicked, dirty, fat bass line. You are sentenced to having your next record enter the charts at number 179 before dropping straight out the following week. Furthermore, you are sentenced to 20 years of having to appear on cheesy chat shows in Taiwan, talking about how you used to be famous. And may God have mercy on your lip gloss.
Call Houty and the Blowfish.
You know what's happened, don't you? We just haven't got time for our friends anymore.
Like Nicola.
We're supposed to be godmothers to her baby. We haven't even spent any time with her at all.
Why don't we take her out tonight?
Yeah! I'm going really mental!
Yeah!
Hang on. We've got a show to do tomorrow. And what are we going to do about that?
If Clifford finds out we've been out all night, he'll go berserk.
What are we waiting for? Yeah! Come on, Vicky! I can't run in these heels!
bye.
Hello, Malcolm. It's Jerry.
I'm Melanie C.
And I'm Victoria Malcolm.